Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us in good time. My name is Lucy Machocho, a pharmacist and technical programs assistant here at African Pharmaceutical Network, and I'll be your moderator for this session today. I'd like to welcome you all to the session and kindly request that we give, I see we are at 44 participants right now, kindly requesting that you give 2 more minutes for the rest to join us, and then we'll be able to kick off. It is now 12:03 and we can get started. So as I mentioned before, maybe for those who've just joined us, my name is Lucy Machocho. I'm a pharmacist by training and technical programs assistant here at African Pharmaceutical Network, and I'll be your moderator for today. So before we get started, I would like to have some house calls so that we ensure a streamlined webinar. First off, I would kindly request that you keep your audios muted so that you can avoid any background noise that will interrupt the sessions. You may turn on your videos if you choose to, although you may notice that has been disabled. However, that will be enabled during the Q&A session that will come at the tail end of the session. We will have the introductory remarks by African Pharmaceutical Network, an introduction to what we do, who we are, and then introduce the speakers, have the session, and a Q&A at the tail end, where you will have a chance to ask any questions that may come up during the session. However, for any burning questions, I highly encourage us to use the chat or Q&A session. And with that, kindly allow me to present my screen as I do the introduction to African Pharmaceutical Network. Anna says that you cannot hear anything. Maybe someone can confirm if you can hear me. Victoria, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. So maybe check your audio, Anna, kindly. All right. So please allow me to share my screen. African Pharmaceutical Network. So we are a pan-African network that brings together professionals and stakeholders or organizations working within the African pharmaceutical sector. And the purpose for this is to promote facilitation of facilitate exchange of best practices or knowledge that will empower professionals to meaningfully engage in driving growth within the African pharmaceutical sector. We also do policy shaping to ensure that policies that are in place are actually responsive to the needs of the market and support the growth of the businesses themselves. We also support innovation nurturing partnerships, and these are anchored towards building a reliable access to safe, efficacious, and affordable quality medicines and pharmaceutical services for the African population. In the background, so we were formed at the backdrop of the COVID-19, and one of the reasons why that drove to the formation or rather establishment of African Pharmaceutical Network was the challenges that we had seen in the pharmaceutical sector in Africa. And one of these challenges was limited local manufacturing capacity. And we noticed that most of the African countries are actually relying on importation, with about 70 to 80 of the products used locally, pharmaceutical products used locally in most African countries being imported. So you'll actually notice in countries such as Nigeria, where even the pharmaceutical sector has a large number of pharmaceutical manufacturers, about 130, they still import about 70% of their products. I think only South Africa is the country that does a lot of local manufacturing that meets 60 to 70% of the locally manufactured products are used locally in South Africa. However, despite this, they still import up to 98% of the active pharmaceutical ingredients. And you'll find that with the reliance on importation, this also brings about several challenges, such as infiltration of counterfeit and substandard health products and technologies. And in the face of these challenges, we noticed that there's segregation in the efforts put by the industry stakeholders. So you'll find that those ones working in the regulatory processes are working in silos. Those working in supply chain also working on their own department. They're not looking at how we can have concerted efforts to curb the challenges, or rather to mitigate the challenges that the African Pharmaceutical Network is facing. And so we created a common platform because we noticed that there's also no common platform to drive the industry-led continental agenda on the development and growth of the pharmaceutical industry, because they're saying that in the face of the challenges that Africa is facing, the innovations that the industry is looking to on how to solve this solution, on how to solve these problems, will actually be the driving force to the fourth industrial revolution. So then can we have a common platform to drive this industry-led agenda? Because there are several solutions that want to be implemented. There's the Africa Free Continental Trade Area that aims at removing the tariff barriers that local manufacturers face within the industry, to allow them to gain access to economies of scale that will allow them to expand or rather trade freely within the African market. Because if South Africa is able to manufacture up to 60 to 70% of their pharmaceutical products, then how can they tap into other markets instead of Kenya having to import from a country like India or China? Can it import from South Africa? How can we be able to remove these trade barriers? So we need to have a common platform to drive this agenda. Our aim is to foster continental knowledge sharing and workforce development within the pharmaceutical industry, and this is to build the competencies of the pharmaceutical workforce in the continent, because we believe that we have the capabilities in-house in Africa to be able to drive this agenda of growth and development in the African Pharmaceutical Network. So then can we build the capabilities of the workforce to be able to meaningfully engage to drive this agenda? promote best practices and stimulate innovative models of practice in the pharmaceutical industry as well, because as regulations keep changing and as the market dynamics are changing, we need to find new ways of working and be able to keep up with current best practices in the market. Also champion for policies that actually are responsive to the needs of the market, and not just, and be able to also support the businesses themselves in thriving, because as you all know, the organizations that work in the pharmaceutical industry are also a business. So then how can we ensure the policies are not only responsive to the market needs, but also enabling the business to thrive simultaneously? And also stimulate investment in the African pharmaceutical industry, such as in investment in infrastructure, research and development, and the workforce itself, because we've noticed that these are some of the spaces where a lot of investment is needed for the market to actually thrive. Our priorities. So we focus on pharmaceutical workforce development, and this is through the Pharmacy Academy that was established in 2023, that is last year. We also do this through industry discussion forums such as this, where we aim to promote best practices in best practices among the professionals. And for this in particular, this is now on regulatory system strengthening. And one of the challenges that the pharmaceutical industry is facing is on regulatory system strengthening, because you've noticed that there are several regulatory challenges that we are facing. The regulatory systems themselves are fragmented, and the professionals themselves are not actually competent or have all the knowledge that is required to explore alternative pathways, such as the EU Medicines for All. And for us to actually gain maximum value from these alternative processes, alternative regulatory pathways that are in place, we need to make sure that we actually have the knowledge to be able to and to adopt the processes and also utilize them in our practice. So then we've created this webinar to be able to create awareness on the process itself and how to use it so that we can adopt it in our places of practice. We also prioritize business ecosystem support to enable the businesses within the pharmaceutical industry to thrive, and also shape policies to ensure that they're responsive to the needs of the market. Our how is through industry discussion forums such as this, training and experiential learning opportunities, policy advocacy and environmental shaping, and market intelligence and technical support to stakeholders. The team itself, so we have an advisory team composed of 3, that is Oli Seyunam, McDonald Noser, Christine Osai, and John Paul Omolo as the board chairperson. In the secretariat, there's myself and Juliet Ouma, who's the programs assistant. The leadership team, so we have David Odhiambo as our curator, Dr. Kevin Odongo, Esther Onyango, Denish Kinini, and Anushri Patel. Some of our partners include FIP, IFPMA, H3D Foundation, Bloom Health, and Empower Swiss. Our geographical footprint. So we have presence in about 25 countries in East, mostly in East, South, and West Africa. So we are looking to expand into the North Africa. And what this means is that we have on-ground people that can support in the implementation, execution of projects, where we have projects in this particular that involve these particular countries. Our offering. So as mentioned in the pharmaceutical workforce development, we offer courses within the Pharmacy Academy that aim at building competent and skilled professionals that can meaningfully engage in driving the agenda of pharmaceutical growth in Africa. And so some of the courses that we offer include regulatory affairs training, pharmacovigilance and patient safety, pharmaceutical supply chain management, and we also have some that are also upcoming. And we also organize workshop and industry discussion forums such as this to promote knowledge sharing. So as I've mentioned, we have 3 courses right now in the Pharmacy Academy. There's the Regulatory Affairs course, Pharmaceutical Supply Chain Management, and Pharmacovigilance and Patient Safety. All our courses are actually running for 3 months at a fee of $300, and they are offered by professionals that are practicing because we believe that they are best suited to share best practices on the ground. So what next for you? You can become a member, you can partner with us on projects, or also learn with us in some of our courses. And with that, I come to the end of my presentation. I would also like to introduce the speakers quickly so that you can get to the program itself. Just a minute, please. So I'll start with Victoria. So Victoria Palmi has extensive experience at the European Medicines Agency, having worked there for over 20 years. She's currently leading the European Medicines Agency International Collaboration Programs with WHO and Africa region at the International Affairs Office. And she's worked in the evaluation of medicines department as a product lead in several therapeutic areas, where she led initiatives of accelerated assessment, initial marketing authorizations, and advanced therapies. I'll move on to Maribel. So Maribel Gonzalez is an infectious disease physician who is currently serving as the Senior Scientific Officer at the Vaccines and Therapies for Infectious Diseases Office, Human Medicine Division at the European Medicines Agency in Netherlands. In this capacity, she is mainly involved in therapeutics indicated for the treatment of infectious diseases, as well as EMA's EU Medicines for All, previously known as Article 58. And with that, I'd like to welcome our 2 speakers. The floor is yours. Just bringing up the slides in a minute.
Thank you very much, Lucy, and thank you very much for today's invitation and letting us share with you a bit of the EU Medicines for All pathway and how this can play an important role in health product security in Africa. As you know, the EMA role, and those of many regulators around the world, is to protect public health in Europe by ensuring that all medicines that are available on our market are safe, are effective, and are of high quality. And the way we achieve this is through the evaluation and through the supervision of medicines through their entire life cycle, from clinical trials to post-marketing surveillance. But a central pillar of this strategy to protect public health as well is our international collaboration with other partners. And this helps us promote harmonization of regulatory requirements, sharing of information, and addressing common challenges. And that's how this pathway came about. We have, in cooperation with WHO and national regulators where the products will be used, we can provide scientific opinions on high priority human medicines and vaccines that are intended for use outside of the European Union. Can I have the next slide, please? You might have heard that we have in the EU different pathways. The centralized procedure, these are the products that the EMA is responsible for, and the member states are responsible for individual national authorizations of some less innovative products. But no matter which route you choose, whether it's the centralized procedure, national procedure, or EU Medicines for All, we have always one set of common rules. We have a legislation that is common to all member states, and this describes requirements, submissions, procedures, guidelines. We have one set of common rules that are applicable to all pathways so that we can assess with the same principles, and no matter who's the lead rapporteur, that we always have the same oversight. Can we go to the next slide, please? We believe this common set of rules and this reliance among the EU member states facilitates that medicines around in all EU member states are authorized at the same time. We are also able to deal with any safety issue at the same time and in the same manner with a centralized safety monitoring. The product information is available in all EU languages at the same time, and this EU network allows us to have access to the largest network of experts in medicines regulation, so we can pool resources to work more efficient and effectively within Europe. Can I go to the next slide, please? I was mentioning before that health has no barriers and we cannot work in isolation, and there are some mechanisms which we collaborate with international regulators. We have bilateral relationships with different member states and organizations like WHO or EDQM. We have international liaison officers. So we have, for example, one person that is sitting in the FDA. We have one FDA employee and one employee from PMDA, the Japanese agency that work with us and are sitting with us at the EMA. We have different ADO confidentiality agreement. We have different mutual recognition agreement. We have over 30 clusters where experts are allowed to discuss in detail product discussions during the development and during the assessment to arrive to common understanding or conclusions on key issues of the assessment. And we participate in a number of multinational relations forums where we can as well discuss guidelines on how to converge and how to harmonize requirements and scientific thinking around the way we assess medicines. Can I have the next slide, please? One of the mechanisms, for example, that I was mentioning before, this MRA, ensures that we use the best resources and promote mutual reliance and work sharings with other international authorities, and it's around the area of inspections and compliance. We have different mutual recognition agreement with different countries. You can see the countries on the screen, but they all allow us to have to recognize inspections that are carried out by these authorities. This has a benefit for industry that we have fewer duplication inspections, we have waiving of retesting and importation, and we encourage greater international harmonization. There's also a lot of benefits for regulators in a sense that we can better use our inspection resources that are always very scarce. We can focus on manufacturers of higher risk, and we encourage greater international harmonization on the way we look at key issues that affect safety of medicines. Can I go to the next slide, please? Within this context of international collaboration, because international collaboration is, I guess, in the DNA of the EMA and the European way of working, we have this EU Medicines for All pathway, and we support global regulatory system through this collaboration with WHO with this procedure. Since it started, 17 medicines have been assessed through this EU Medicines for All pathway, and this has been translated in 94 in 229 marketing authorizations in 94 countries worldwide. We, the EMA, evaluate and give a scientific opinion in collaboration with WHO, in collaboration with the target national regulatory authorities where the product will be used on these innovative products that are intended to be used outside of the EU. And we can, since 2025, also conduct this procedure in parallel to a centralized procedure to have a marketing authorization for products that will be used in the EU to accelerate access at global scale. Can I go to the next slide, please? So this is the scope of our legislation and how it describes our collaboration with the WHO. So it is embedded in our legislation that the EMA can have a scientific opinion, not a marketing authorization because it will not be used within the EU, but a scientific opinion in cooperation with WHO and with national regulatory authorities, and that its use is intended exclusively for markets outside of the European Union. And the main objective is to protect and promote public health by facilitating rapid access to those countries on these important new medicines. And here I'm going to hand over to my colleague Maribel, who's going to walk you through the assessment procedure and the particularities of this pathway. Maribel, over to you.
Thank you very much, Victoria. Good morning to everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you today. And following Victoria's introduction, I will follow the aspect, the more procedural aspect related to Article 58, also named EU4All, so you can understand how it works in practice. Next slide, please. So in this first slide, you will have a general overview about the process. I will explain in detail later on all the aspects and steps that you have here, but this is just to start so you can understand how it works. First of all, you need to take into consideration, as Victoria said, that this is a unique procedure because the beauty of that is that the WHO and also the national regulatory authorities that many times are the targeted countries where the product will be used upon after opinion are involved since the beginning. And that is very important because we will have the input of the local knowledge, the expertise in the disease, the characteristics that this could have. And it starts even before the submission of the dossier. For example, if you can see at the beginning of the slides, the interaction can start during the development of the medicine, during the clinical trials, because in that case, the applicant, that can be, or the sponsor, that can be industry, but can be also be academia or NGO. It's not only related to one kind of a sponsor only. They can ask for advice, for scientific advice to EMA. And in this procedure, they can ask, for example, questions about quality, clinical, non-clinical, pharmacovigilance. So all questions about scientific aspect are feasible, sometimes also regulatory questions. And in this procedure, the WHO is already involved. This means that the involvement is very early in the development, so we can work together since the beginning. Once everything is ready, the applicant can or should ask EMA if this procedure can be eligible under Article 58. The eligibility is decided in combination with the WHO, and if this is agreed, then the applicant can proceed to the submission of the dossier. For the submission of the dossier, once this is done, I will explain the details later, but once the evaluation starts, the committees that are going to be mainly two, the CHMP and the BRAC, and I will explain you the details later, as said, will evaluate in detail the dossier. If a positive opinion is reached, then this will be published on our web. So the assessment is public and everybody could have access to that. And if needed, this is very linked to the WHO pre-qualification and CRP, as Victoria will explain later after in the third block of the presentation. The WHO can also make the recommendation. And then the national authorities outside Europe can use this document and this opinion to base their marketing, and also to facilitate and to, at the end, as Victoria said, the main objective of this procedure is just to facilitate the rapid access of the patient to the medicines that they can need. So this is in summary, more or less, all the steps that I will explain now. Next slide, please. Could you please move to the next slide? Maybe the system. Thank you very much. And what are the benefits? Well, the first point that I would like to highlight is that the assessment is going to be very rigorous. This means that if for a centralized procedure of a product that is intended to be used in Europe, the committees will raise an issue, can be a GMP, a GCP, safety, efficacy issue. This will be also raised during Article 58. They will not be different in the points of the evaluation. The difference will be in the involvement of the WHO and the national authorities, that they can add the expertise, as said, and that it is not finished in marketing authorization. It finished in an opinion, as Victoria said, that can be used for the national authorities to base their evaluation. The other aspect that is, and I think that this is quite important as well, is that the benefit risks are tailored to the intended non-new population. Therefore, if there is any specific characteristic, what are the environment, the disease, the prevalence, what are the main target population that should be evaluated, everything will be also taken into account during the evaluation. On the other hand, it's important to say that as the national authorities are involved since the beginning, as we said, this can be also start at the time of the scientific advice, but at least after the submission of the dossier, this is a kind of exercise that can help to increase the capabilities and the capacity building exercise, because they are shadowing the process. They can also provide comments, as I said, that are of great value. Sorry, something happened with the image. I don't know if it's blurred now. Thank you. Something technical issue. As said, this will be followed by the pre-qualification program and will facilitate the registration in the target countries, but it's important also to say that the national regulators will remain independent for their decision. It's not that, this is a binding opinion. They are independent and they can use that to make their own decision. Next slide, please. Can we move to the next slide? Yeah, thank you. I think that we have here a kind of delay because of the internet. Thank you very much. This is only to highlight that, as said, the Article 58 is mirroring the centralized procedure. So there will be thank you. There will be an eligibility. The legal basis should be selected by the applicant. Inspection will apply. Post-authorization measure can also be agreed by the committees. So the applicant should comply with that and should come back with the measure that has been established. The risk management plan and the pharmacovigilance summary should also be planned, and we'll explain all in detail. Next slide, please. Thank you. So let's start with the pre-submission. As said, the interaction could start even before the pre-submission of the dossier. And there are different tools that can be used. For example, the Innovation Task Force that allows an early dialogue of innovative medicines and can cover regulatory, technical, scientific aspect. And this is can be asked before the scientific advice. So it's a very early stage. They can also, the sponsor or the future applicant can also request scientific advice, as said, or also ETF. ETX is the Emergency Task EUM4. This is an advisory body that supports, gives support in the regulatory activities in the preparation for example, public health emergency, pandemics, or for example, you know that the role of ET8 has been very relevant during the COVID pandemic, or also has been involved in the monkeypox outbreak. So depending on the product, this will go to one work or to one group or to another. There are also other activities. I will not enter in detail because we will not end up the presentation today, but you know, there are business pipeline projects for the filling strategy. Then you know, we can have a pre-submission meeting that I will explain later. Also, you know, after Article 58, you can be eligible for small and medium enterprise of companies, and there is an office that is helping this small and medium enterprise to go through the process. Can be also fee reductions. In this case, this should be asked directly to the executive director, and we have also the requirements and when this apply on our web. All the information will be there. And also they are eligible for prime products that are really promising and they need a support since the very beginning, and also accelerate assessment of the dossier. I will explain later. Can we go to the next slide, please? Let's start with the eligibility, okay? We already went through the pre-submission, we discussed what are the possibilities there, and then the applicant considered that the product can be submitted soon, and then they need to request the eligibility. That as said is that, you know, if the procedure can be eligible for evaluation under Article 58 or EU Medicine for All. In this case, it is important to consider that the eligibility will target products that are important for the prevention of treatment of diseases of major public health interest for market outside of European Union, as Victoria already indicated. Can be new formulation, fixed dose combination, generic even, and the eligibility will be decided in collaboration with the WHO. Once the applicant has the green line and it is agreed that the eligibility has been reached and this product can be submitted under Article 58, the process will start to select the product lead that will be the main contact point for the company, and to the rapporteurs that I will explain in the following slides. Next slide, please. The nomination of the rapporteur is an important point after the eligibility. This is when, once we know that the product is, you know, is eligible, can be selected for evaluation the dossier, we will need two committees. One committee will be the CHMP. The CHMP will be more focused in the evaluation of quality, non-clinical and clinical safety and efficacy of the medicine in concrete that we are evaluating, and the PRAC. The PRAC is a committee that will be more responsible for assessing the pharmacovigilance plan and the risk minimization measure that should be in place at the time, should be planned and should be agreed. It is part of the opinion, it's part of the scientific opinion at the time, once the committees reach the opinion. And this is important because all these aspects should be covered in the dossier. In case there are issues, it will be raised at question during the different process that I will explain later. So the applicant will need to come back to reply to these questions in order to clarify the dossier before an opinion can be reached. Next slide, please. Also, as said, one of the most important points of this procedure is that the WHO and the national regulatory authorities are involved in the process. Once the eligibility is agreed, we have said that we will start to nominate the rapporteurs, but also the WHO will start to nominate the national regulatory authorities that could participate as an expert in this procedure. this is many times these authorities, these national, this NRA, sorry, will be the ones that the company has indicated that are the targeted countries, or will be the first one that will be targeted. In this case, this is important because they can also see since the beginning what are the issues, if they can raise even some points that I will explain in the next slide. And as said, this can facilitate the process when they receive their own dossier. The nomination are based on scientific expertise. We are working now in improving the process with the WHO in a very good collaboration, with a very open dialogue. For example, many times we need experts that it's very difficult that an expert has the expertise for the whole dossier. As you know, many people sometimes are requested, or teams, but for the representative, it's important to have some of them that are, for example, more dedicated to the CHMP role, as said, clinical, non-clinical, quality, but also others that can address the question of the issues at the level of the PRAD. For example, what are the possibilities of the pharmacovigilance system? What measures are feasible or not for the risk minimization, for the risk management plan, for the risk minimization measure. So we are working on that just to try to have a complete group. Sometimes this is not feasible because it's not so easy to nominate. Then sometimes the availability is not there, and the human resources are limited, as you know. So sometimes it's not so easy, but we are improving a lot the process just to try to have the expertise for every procedure. Next slide, please. And then we have also, as said, the roles described in our guide, in our procedure. But in a summary, what is important is that they are, as said, they can provide their scientific expertise since the beginning. They will receive the assessment report that I will explain later, and they can raise comments if they consider that something is important. They can say to the committees and send comment, and the rest of the member states that participate in the CHMP, please look into this, or we consider that this point is important. So this will be taken into consideration for the CHMP. Also, sometimes can participate if needed in GMP or GCP inspection. And of course, we have the local knowledge that this is very important, as I said before. They, as said, at the end, remain independent, but also the CHMP, so the WHO and the national regulatory authorities participate during the procedure, and they are very well listened. At the end, the opinion rely on the CHMP, the final opinion. Next slide, please. Then, when the applicant is almost ready to submit, we have the pre-submission interaction or meetings. And this is very important. It's an opportunity that is good to use. That is not mandatory, but it's very good because the applicant in that case can ask questions to facilitate, for example, the validation process, to know exactly what they need to submit. If they have doubts, for example, I don't know, if the labeling needed, in which language, many issues that can be raised at this point, mainly regulatory issues, but also sometimes we can have a meeting with the rapporteurs. But it's important to say at this point that this is not a scientific pre-assessment. The personal views of the rapporteur can be given, or it can be clarified, for example, if the dossier is enough for an evaluation, but this is not a scientific pre-assessment, and therefore this will not prevent from the opinions that will be given by the committee during the evaluation. This will be independent. Next slide, please. The applicant should select what is the legal basis. And you have here all the possibilities are the same, you can see that are the same that for a centralized procedure, and every application is linked to a specific data requirement. As said, is the choice of the applicant that once something is selected, the dossier should be submitted accordingly. Next slide, please. Then once we have the submission, we start the validation. Some aspects that you should consider. There are things that do not apply for EU4All. For example, the pediatric legislation. A pediatric investigation plan is not mandatory, while this is for a centralized procedure, but it is really important to also consider if children should be also included in the application, or if the development could benefit the children. The issue that is not mandatory should not indicate that children should be behind the development. This is important for all the medicines, as you know, and things has changed a lot thanks to the pediatric legislation. Also, the orphan incentive will not apply, the 5 years renewal, or for example, the NRG consultation for the inventive name is not needed, or there is no obligation for the applicant to be established in the European Union. And there are also some differences about the batch release certification of the batch testing that can be located outside Europe. Next slide, please. Well, let's start the assessment. We have submitted the dossier. This has been, we already have the expert nominated. The validation has been successfully done. And then we start the evaluation. During the first evaluation, the rapporteurs and the committee will evaluate the dossier, all the aspects, and will raise comments and a list of questions. This list of questions should be addressed by the applicant, and for that there is a clock stop, an established clock stop. There's a time when the applicant will work in the responses that will be submitted. Once this is submitted, the new second round of evaluation will start until we can reach opinion. When all the issues are solved, the opinion can be given. Next slide. Sometimes to reach that an oral explanation is needed, but this is not mandatory, and many times this is not needed. What are the timelines? Well, normally 210 days. Sometimes, and this can be requested before the submission of the dossier, an accelerated assessment can be requested. In that situation, the time for evaluation will be reduced to 150 days. When is this possible? Well, this is possible when, for example, for medicines that are considered of major interest for public health, there is a clear unmet need, and the dossier, and in the accelerated assessment, you need to submit a request that follows a template, and you need already to introduce your initial data coming from the clinical development. And this is also important. The dossier should be quite complete because you will follow an accelerated assessment. This means a reduced timelines, and it's quite demanding because the applicant needs to address the question in time, and if this is not possible, then the accelerated assessment will be reverted to a normal timetable. So this should also be taken into consideration when requesting accelerated assessment. Next slide, please. Then I've said for the assessment report only to tell you that there is a very complete evaluation with different assessment dedicated to quality, non-clinical, clinical, a general overview with the list of questions, and also the PRAC for the pharmacovigilance and the risk minimization measure. Everything is with the applicant for them to address the question, but also with the WHO and the national regulatory authorities so they can provide comments. In the list of questions, we can have major objection that will prevent for opinion in case this is not solved. Another concern that the company can also address before reaching opinion, and of course the product information that is the most important document and that has been clear and agreed at the time of the opinion. Next slide, please. The risk minimization plan, well, you know what is that? It's a document that is mainly focused on the medicine safety profile and what are the measures that should prevent or minimize these risks in the patients, the activities that are planned after the marketing authorization, or in this case after the opinion, to gain more knowledge about the safety, especially the safety of the medicine. For the centralized procedure, the applicant must submit an RMP, but this also applies for the EU Medicine for All. This should be in place at the time of the opinion, and the document should be agreed at that time. And the companies has the obligation to submit and update the RMP when the things are evolving. Next slide, please. After the opinion, well, at the time of the opinion, I've said in one of the previous slides, the committee can decide that post-authorization measure is needed, for example, to clarify better the efficacy or to determine a point that is not entirely clear. Sometimes a recommendation that the companies need to submit to complement the dossier. So this will be established at the time of the opinion, and the company should, or in this case, the marketing authorization or the opinion holder, because we are here talking about Article 58, will need to come back to address this point. Also, the PI, as you know, is a document that should be maintained and should be updated, and this is an obligation for the company, and this also applies for Article 58. If there is any information that affects the benefit risk, again, the opinion holder should submit to AMA this information. So I've said at the beginning, this is the same that for a centralized procedure, so the evaluation is not finishing at the time of the opinion. It will continue because more knowledge will be acquired when the product start to be used, and therefore updates can be needed. Next slide, please. And this is the pharmacovigilance requirements. Again, I will not enter in the details because I'm sure that you have a lot of knowledge about that, but this is mainly to highlight that against it will be needed. Also in Article 58, it is important to submit the periodic safety updated report that we call PSUR. The frequency will be stated in the scientific opinion once we reach that. If there is any signal detection, any serious adverse reaction, everything should be submitted and should be updated. So it's a continuous process. Next slide, please. And yeah, I want to finish before giving the floor again to Victoria with this slide. This is an example. This is only an example and is selected only for learning purposes for you to explain a bit the process with an example. You know what is the dapivirine vaginal ring. You know that is a ring that is used for women from 18 years and older to reduce the risks of HIV acquisition. And in this case, the development during the scientific advice, the WHO, and as you say, some countries like Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Zambia, or Zimbabwe were involved since the very beginning. Then during the assessment, the WHO and also Kenya and Zimbabwe participate as national regulatory authorities and experts. And then this will follow the WHO pre-qualification, what it will reach opinion. And after that, different authorities outside Europe starting the process. The slide is not up to date. Probably there are more after this one. We have only added just the ones that follow after the opinion. This, therefore, facilitate the opinion of the national authorities, although I've said they could raise also their own comments or things. But also it's important to consider that I've said all the points that during the evaluation are very well taken, and if there is any GCP, any GMP issues, this will prevent for opinion in all the cases, or if there are any question that cannot be solved and is important, this will be also a point to address in a way or another, because if not, the opinion will not be reached, and it will happen with a centralized procedure. This applies to all the products, because the standard as said are the same. In this case, for example, it was quite important, the participation of the WHO, the national regulator, the national regulatory authorities, and the patient representative, because they were able to transmit what was the need in the places where it was intended for use. What was the situation? Because sometimes the situation can change, for example, depending on what are the medicinal products that are available there, or with the HIV, there are many issues as well to consider, like the community approach and other aspects. So in this case, we can say that the participation of them was key to reach the opinion. And I will finish here. I will give now the floor to Victoria to continue with the presentation, and then we can go to the question. Thank you.
Can I have the next slide, please? Thank you, Maribel. As you heard from Maribel, throughout the assessment, throughout the development, the importance of collaborating with WHO and collaborating with target NRAs is to enrich our assessment and ensure we have the national and epidemiological expertise and local knowledge of where the product is going to be used. At the same time, the reason for this collaboration is to facilitate a faster WHO pre-qualification, a faster national authorizations. So you heard that the procedure ends with a scientific opinion. So we have an assessment done, and applicants still need to apply for national authorizations, or if needed, pre-qualifications. And these processes are streamlined when when WHO is part of our assessment, and some NRAs are part of our assessment as well. The national steps can be done country by country, but also they can be done through the WHO collaborative registration procedure. So I'm going to give you a couple of facts and data about this pathway that starts to be more and more used by applicants that have requested an EU Medicines for All opinion. We have few products that have gone through the collaborative registration procedure, but you can see these few assessments have a very big impact and have been translated. 13 medicines have been translated in 83 marketing authorizations via CRP. So the use might not be massive, but actually the impact it is. We see that this accelerates national approvals, often when in countries where resources might be limited, and this is based on the assessment and the work already done by SRAs, by stringent regulatory authorities like EMA. Not only EMA, but companies can use our assessment to apply for the collaborative registration procedure. And this allows faster and earlier access to essential medicines for patients worldwide, improving global public health. Can I have the next slide, please? The way in which EMA gets involved in the WHO CRP is at the request of the marketing authorization holder. So once you have an opinion, you can decide whether you want to use this opinion directly at national level. And this goes often very fast with those countries that have participated in the evaluation, but we cannot involve the whole role in our evaluation. And for some others, CRP is a very, very optimized way to get a faster authorization. So national authorities will require the same product that has been used for EMA assessment, the assessment reports, a quality information summary that confirms that the product is the same, and GMP certificates and/or inspection reports to confirm that the applicant is able to produce consistently quality pharmaceutical products, and they are meeting the required standards set by the EMA. Can I have the next slide, please? You know the CHMP assessment report, as Maribel mentioned, and this applies for any centrally authorized product and any EU Medicines for All opinion. Is a very thorough document, and this final assessment report is going to reflect all the scientific review of the dossier, all the information that has been provided the applicant, and which are the discussions held at CHMP on this key information that has been provided. We'll add often as well discussions that have been provided if needed by the applicant in an oral explanation in a hearing. If there is any divergent views by the CHMP, they will be reflected in the CHMP assessment report. And there is especially a very big discussion on how the CHMP finally concluded on the benefit risk of the assessment and any key statements of the product information. So you will have in our assessment reports a very comprehensive summary of the data submitted, a very comprehensive summary of the discussion of the CHMP on this data, and a very comprehensive benefit risk discussion. Can I go to the next slide, please? Companies often use the GMP certificate in their submission to national regulatory authorities outside the EU. And actually, the GMP certificate is something very powerful. To be GMP compliant means that an applicant has demonstrated the ability to produce consistently quality pharmaceutical products, and they are meeting required standards that we have set by the EMA. The EMA guidelines cover all aspects of the productions, from starting material to premises and equipment to the training and personnel of the and hygiene of the staff, and details. They need to detail written procedures for each of these processes that could affect the quality of the finished product. So there must be systems in place to provide documented proof that the correct procedures are consistently followed at each step in the manufacturing process every time a product is made. Can I have the next slide, please? These MIAs and GMP certificates are actually available in the EU public database. So this is available to the general public. It requires no registration, username or password, and you can access this website to understand which are the manufacturing sites that have a valid GMP certificate. So this is actually a very powerful document, a very powerful website where you can see how companies are able to manufacture medicines at a very high level. Can I go to the next slide, please? One would say that having a GMP certificate is sufficient to demonstrate compliance. There are national competent authorities that require as well the inspection report, and the inspection report provides more detailed information about the outcome of an inspection and the manufacturing site and the assessment of how the manufacturer is compliant with the guidelines and the regulatory requirements. But GMP certificate is a yes or a no. So no matter how the discussion in the inspection report goes, if a manufacturer has a GMP certificate, it means the outcome of the inspection was positive. And the inspection report will provide additional details and more general information about the site, about the inspection, about the findings and any observations or recommendations that were done for the applicant, how they review the management system, equipment, premises, and all the conclusions that summarize the overall findings or any recommended regulatory action. Can I go to the next slide, please? I would like to finalize by saying that actually faster regulatory approvals allow patients to have earlier access to safe and effective medicines, and the EU Medicines for All is a very powerful pathway to facilitate access to very innovative medicines. The EU Medicines for All pathway has the same rigorous assessment of medicines for the EU, but we add an additional epidemiology and medicinal disease expertise by WHO, by national competent authorities that enrich our assessment. And we are confident that the EU Medicines for All pathway reduces the time to approval of very important innovative medicines. They speed up access, it reduces duplication of efforts, and provides capacity building. And here we've finished our presentation, and we are happy to take any questions from anyone that wishes to have additional details on what we have said today. Thank you very much. You'll see in this presentation very useful links about the procedure and any additional detail that you want to know about what is published on our website.
Thank you so much, Victoria and Maribel, for that informative session. So I can see we already have some questions on the Q&A section. So let me kindly read them for you. So the first one is, can this procedure be used for medicines intended for European markets as well? If not, is there any plan to expand this procedure to those type of medicines in future? Also, can this procedure be used for African Medicines Agency evaluations when it is fully established?
Victoria, I can start with the first part of the question, and maybe you can address the following one for the AMA.
Okay.
Yeah. So in principle, as we said, this ends in a scientific opinion, and the European Commission will not, in a centralized procedure, you would have then the face of the European Commission for the marketing authorization. We have not discussed that because the time is limited and there are many details that related to this procedure, but we have a parallel assessment. In the parallel assessment, the Article 58 is submitted in parallel with the centralized procedure. And in this case, these two procedures that go in parallel and are done in parallel and discussed in parallel at the committee, so all the process that we have explained happen at the same time for the two procedures. One of them will be for Europe and the other one will be for outside Europe, for Article 58. And this is important because, for example, at the time of the product information that at the end is the most important document because it's the one that they are going to use the healthcare professional to use the medicine. So it's like I would say it's the keystone. The key and the big, the main stone of the procedure can be adapted at some way. For example, imagine that for the environmental measures, the environmental measures studies are not an obligation, but in the case of Article 58, because it can change from one country to another, and then the applicant or the opinion, or in this case already the scientific holder, or once they reach the opinion in the different countries, should adapt that to the national requirements. So this is important, and therefore this allows this difference, but only in the case of the parallel plus this parallel procedure we will reach also marketing in Europe. It could happen that the product is intended for Article 58 only because, for example, it's for a disease that in Europe almost is not existing. It's just for a disease that is mainly happening in some countries or in some areas, and therefore the need is there. That is, for example, one of the issues that why one applicant or company can choose to go for parallel or can choose to go only for Article 58. I stop here. Victoria, I give you the floor.
Thank you. Yes, as Maribel mentioned, the main objective of this pathway is to allow to use our experts for an assessment of products that are not intended to be used in the EU. And when I say that they are not intended to be used, as Maribel mentioned, is because probably it's very likely that the disease doesn't exist, or maybe like we have the typical EU medicines for all will be like for dengue, for malaria. We have, but we have also, for example, insulins that have different presentations that do not need to be kept in a fridge, for example, and they have different use. You could think of travelers vaccine versus an endemic vaccine that could be different. If you have the typical oncology product, let's say, that you want to use in Europe, you might not need necessarily to use the EU Medicines for All pathway. You would apply for a centrally authorized marketing authorization. And with that scientific opinion, you can use CRP or you can use other reliance pathways outside of the EU. The objective of the EU Medicines for All is to allow to use our expertise for something that doesn't oblige you to market within the EU. And it's at the same time a collaborative assessment of using our experts and using WHO and providing as well capacity building to NRAs that will be in the future using those products and are able to assess hand in hand with our experts very innovative medicines that have not been able to use, have not been used before, might have not been in current guidelines, and that's why the objective of this collaboration is to look into the diseases that often or are not used in the same way within the EU. You mentioned, or someone mentioned, whether the expertise of AMA will be, once the future AMA Medicines Agency, could be the ones that we reach out. And actually, this is something that we've been thinking about. When we receive an application for development, no? So let's say we have someone that is developing a treatment, vaccine for Lassa fever. Then they will tell us, we would like to market, or we are doing our clinical trials in these countries, or we will be using our products in these countries. So let's say it's Central Africa. We are not going to involve Indonesia or Mexico. We'll be using the countries where the product is intended to be used. And instead of using an individual expert for one individual country, in the hopefully near future, when there's a African Medicines Agency, we could as well reach out to AMA and ask for expertise of those AMA experts to be involved within our assessment, so that this will allow the whole, for example, of Africa to be involved should there be a need, should there be an objective to use those products in Africa. So I think it's a very good idea, something we have been thinking about once AMA is in place, and the way we reach out to and we involve experts is together with the applicant, depending on the disease, depending on the product, and depending on where it's going to use. We reach out to those countries that are key for the first maybe deployment of the medicine, but we could very much use AMA expertise in the future to facilitate that involvement and expertise of the African continent.
Thank you so much, Victoria and Maribel. The next question is, what will be the involvement of the European Medicines Agency in the post-approval life cycle of the products? Is any post-approval change submitted to and evaluated by EMA?
I can take that, Victoria. I can
Yes.
start. Yes, I've said in the slides, the EMA involvement is not finishing at the time of the opinion. I've said is mirroring constantly the work that is done with the centralized procedure. So in the same way that a marketing authorization holder should come back to update the product information should come back with the updated RMP, should come back if there is a measure that has been established to clarify a point that was raised at the time of the opinion as an extra thing. The same will happen with Article 58. They run in parallel, and they need also to submit the PSUR and everything. So everything runs in parallel, and therefore is like centralized procedure is the same. So it's fully involved. Victoria, maybe I missed something, or you want to complement
No,
something?
I mean, we will facilitate that assessment as well of the post-approval life cycle. We will follow up on the safety with the PSUR, so we will receive in those assessments and we will make those assessments available to national authorities that will afterwards can rely on our assessment to speed up the post-approval life cycle oversight.
Thank you. The next question. For EUM4All, it was mentioned about post-authorizations provide new data that can affect the risk-benefit risk balance. Can you elaborate a little bit on that aspect? Is there any obligation to submit variations like for the EU procedure, but on what legal basis or guidelines?
Well, it's the legal obligation of the marketing authorization holder, or in this case, an opinion holder, to keep the opinion updated. It's their obligation. And it's, for example, imagine that after the product is starting to be used, you know that from, as that in the clinical trials we have, for example, regarding to safety, let's talk about safety. We will have some data from phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, but at the end you have a sample of included in the clinical trial. But once it is starting to be used in the real world, we will increase the number of patients, and it could happen that suddenly there is a signal for a safety issue that was not detected before, but now it is considered that it could be related, and the applicant should come back, has the obligation to come back to update the opinion, to send a variation in this case, or whatever the procedure that is needed to update. And imagine that at the end, this procedure, this event is uncommon, because as you know, once at the time of the opinion, there are so many evaluation and things that is not the most common thing. But imagine that could happen, that there is something that it was not described at the time of the clinical trials, and then it's a very important point. Then the benefit risk discussion that, as Victoria said, is very well addressed in the evaluation of the product, and of course in the report, will be open. And it could happen that imagine that at the end it can lead to other measures if this is needed, or it can be considered that no, at the end the signal is not confirmed or whatever. But it means like the products are alive, and therefore if there are new information, it will happen with other procedure, this will also apply to that. The opinion holder and the marketing authorization holder should the obligation to communicate that. Victoria, if you want to complement,
No,
I always
I
ask
think
you,
it
because
was very
I
clear.
think that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Victoria and Maribel. So maybe I can ask, I'm seeing the normal question, or this came in as a follow-up to previous question. Is it required to submit also quality information?
Quality?
Quality?
Did you say quality?
Quality information.
Yes, we will require full dossier in line to what we will require for any initial marketing authorization. There's very few requirements that are not needed. I think they were highlighted by Maribel throughout the talk, but everything else is in line with our requirements. We will require full dossier and we will do a full assessment.
All right. I think that also answers Severin's question of, so also any change on the control manufacturing chemical manufacturing control aspect, change in FP testing would also need to be submitted. So as Victoria has mentioned, the whole dossier will be submitted. So there's a question from Emily. Do you think that AI, oh, they're coming in fast, oh my God. Do you think that AI can be leveraged to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of medical product approval processes?
This is a very good question. Actually, we had yesterday, I don't know if colleagues follow it online, and I think there will be probably posted on our website in any case, a very interesting stakeholders meeting on AI and regulation of AI. So I would encourage everyone that is interested in this field to try to look into our website, this multi-stakeholders meeting. It was very interesting, and yes, I mean, the future of AI is there, and regulators are very much interested as well in improving our way of working, but also in regulating, understanding how can we regulate the use of AI in medicine development and in medicine's assessment.
Thank you, Victoria. So there's also a question, does the EUM4All pathway cover diagnostic medical devices whose accelerated approval is crucial in the event of a public health crisis?
I don't know if you want to take it, Maribel, or...
Yeah, okay. Just to tell you that, that accelerated assessment is feasible, and in case that there is a public health emergency, a pandemic, or something that should be addressed quickly, then we will have also the involvement of ETEC, of the Emergency Task Force. So in that case, we will have the expertise, and also this body advisory group allowed for informal discussion since the very beginning. So everything can be facilitated, and as said, then it could be the accelerated assessment can be requested. So this can be evaluated faster. But of course, although it is evaluated faster, still the applicant should comply with all the things that are needed. This is important. It could happen that some post-authorization measures are imposed at the end of the opinion, but to reach opinion, this quality, non-clinical, clinical, everything should be there.
Thank you so much.
Did you mention as well the word devices? Sorry, Lucy, I'm not sure if you, in your question, did you talk about devices as well?
Yes, diagnostic medical devices.
Yes, so in general, just to add to what Maribel mentioned as well, eligibility of the centralized procedure and eligibility of access to our assessment depends on what the product, and we regulate devices that are combined with medicinal products that are intended or are within the eligibility of our assessment. We do not tend to assess medical devices in general in isolation, but in combination with the medicinal products. And in that case, yes, they will be part of our assessment.
Thank you, Victoria. I'm seeing that do involved NRAs have any power to veto an EMA approval if their questions or concerns are not properly addressed?
So maybe I can start here and you can continue, Maribel. International collaboration is part of our DNA, and we are 27 member states trying to work together, aiming to reach an opinion. Throughout this evaluation, there's many ways in which our experts and NRAs can express their concerns or their approvals. And we try and we aim to reach a consensus, and sometimes it's not possible, and that's why there's divergent positions that are also sometimes published in our assessment. So the majority of the members, the majority of the experts will vote, and then we will reflect in our assessment report if there are divergent views. The way we assess, the way we use our questions and concerns is by throughout the assessment involving these concerned member states, adding questions, adding major objections to the applicant to address those points. For us, the voice of or concerns of national regulatory authorities are very important, in particular for these medicines, since they will be used in those target countries. NRAs do not have a voting right itself, but their voice is important, and we do this in collaboration with any member state. So we have never had the situation where we will approve a medicine and the target country that is going to be used did not want that medicine to be used, and we had that debate. So there is a debate. NRAs do not have a vote, but we've never not included any questions or concerns that has been raised by WHO or by NRAs within our assessment. Maribel, I don't know if you want to add something else.
No, I think that it was clear. Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you, Victoria. So yes, the slides will be shared after the meeting, together with the recording for the session. There's a question on, as per Article 58, how and when exactly are the NRAs in Africa sought by EMA for their scientific opinions in assessing the dossiers for safety, efficacy, and quality of the products, market authorizations, ensuring rapid access in Africa as well?
Well, I've said at the time of the eligibility, we start the nomination of the WHO expert and the national authorities. And many times I've said are the targeted countries. Many times the applicant is telling, well, this product is intended to be used in these countries, and the WHO start the discussions to try to involve them. So the evaluation starts since the very beginning. And as Victoria said, during the process, they can also share their concerns or their comments. So when they receive the dossier, they already know what has been discussed. They already have raised, that is the ideal situation, not always happen, but the intention of this procedure is like they can already ask if they have any issue, then to be solved at the time of the opinion. If then during the evaluation they have something new, of course they can also raise that to the scientific holder during the process. But it is facilitating because if they are involved, it could happen that they are not involved. Not all the national authorities are involved in the process for different reasons. But the dossier will be complete, will be published. Victoria said if they need GMP certificate, so they are or reports, they are available, so they can have all the documents and all the assessment that has been done, and therefore this can facilitate their own assessment if they participate because they know since the beginning what is going on, and if they don't participate because at some point they can rely on the documents. Of course they are independent and they can raise different points, but at some point it's like you are not starting from scratch. You are having already an assessment report, a benefit risk discussion, and then you can decide. Of course, I said national authorities are independent, but you are not starting from scratch. That already helps just to know what the committees has considered as important, as issues, benefits. So I think that this is the main point to facilitate the process and to facilitate the early access. Victoria, if you want to complement here.
No, I think this is very clear. Thank you, Maribel.
Thank you. So we also have a question Can emergency use authorization be attained through this pathway in the event of a pandemic, e.g. vaccines?
Do you want to take it, Victoria?
You can discuss it.
Well, as said, during the pandemic, if there is you can also apply for Article 58 for a procedure. They will be, in this case, if there is a pandemic or is a public health emergency, as said in the committee the advisory group or body that will be involved also will be the emergency task force. It happened, for example, with the COVID. It happened, for example, with monkeypox. There are now out of this, of these diseases, there are now, for example, we receive in our daily practice different meetings that are organized for different entities in the agency, groups for academia, for example. I remember the one example that we have this week. We have a meeting with academia to address a disease in case a potential pandemic or a potential public health emergency that could help. It is already under development, and therefore we have very early discussions where the different parts of the agency add their expertise, and then and we can have also informal discussions with the emergency task force. So if this is not starting at the time of the submission of the dossier, this is for me the most important point, because sometimes for these diseases, it's challenging to plan a clinical trial, or maybe it's not feasible because if there is no a pandemic or epidemic or whatever, there are not enough cases. So there are different pathways that you need to explore, and different groups like even the innovation task force or whatever can help in this point to address some questions and give some guidance. Victoria, again, if you want to.
No, I think it was very clear. The answer is a yes, and we can support and we will discuss with the applicants and developers depending on whether there's an emergency within the EU as well, or if the emergency is localized in a specific place, we will advise to go through one route or another. Should there be a risk for an emergency within the EU as well, and we saw that COVID and even at the time monkeypox and Ebola were considered risk emergencies in the EU, and we recommended applicants to use the centrally authorized product, but we involve in all three cases regulators from outside of the EU, regulators from Africa, and WHO within our assessment. Or it could be that it is something very specific, an emergency very localized in 1-2 countries, and we can facilitate the assessment, rapid assessment, and together with WHO for a rapid pre-qualification and to facilitate a scientific opinion that can be used by many UN agencies in terms of distribution and procurement.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Maybe as a follow-up for that. So for the emergency use authorization, I think Maribel had mentioned that in the accelerated assessment, it takes up to 150 days. So does the emergency use authorization take the same amount of days, or is it shorter than that?
We don't have emergency authorization. This is something that the FDA have, but we don't have this kind of, we have compassionate use, we have the accelerated assessment. That is an assessment that will take 150 days instead of 210. And during the pandemic, we have also the rolling review, but now as we are out of the pandemic, this is not used. But in case this would happen again, let's hope not. They will not have any kind of risk like that. This could be again put in place, I guess. But at the moment, this is not being used because we are out of the pandemic. But it's a measure that has been used, and in case something happened, could be used again. but we don't have emergency authorization. We have conditional approval. We have approval under, under special circumstances, exceptional, circumstances, but we don't have emergency approval.
What we can use is in very key emergency situations, as Maribel mentioned, with the monkeypox, with Ebola, with COVID, we have had very fast authorizations and very fast assessments. So they were out of our normal, even accelerated assessment. They were much faster. But this is not the norm, and it depends on the situation, and it depends if which sort of emergency is triggered.
Okay, thank you for the clarification. I'm seeing there are no more Q&As, so maybe I can just squeeze in one question. So since the use adoption rather, or use of
Sorry, I cannot hear anything.
I lost Lucy as well.
Yeah, I think that
I'm not sure if there's...
it's frozen. I guess this IT problem.
Is there anyone else from the organization connected?
We can write in the chat just to see. Okay.
Sorry,
Somebody
I had
writing.
some technical
Yeah.
Sorry about that. Yes, so I was asking if there are any challenges that African regulatory agencies and applicants face, and how this can be mitigated with the use of the initiative.
We have been evolving, and as Maribel mentioned, we have been developing this pathway from the moment it started up to now. It has changed quite a lot. What we heard at the beginning, it was focused only on the assessment, for example, and we heard from applicants that they would like us to start getting involved with this joint feedback at the time of development. So we started to use as well in scientific advice the input of WHO and national competent authorities. We heard as well issues around pre-qualification, and we are constantly discussing with WHO to ensure there's a very fast pre-qualification process for this type of products, and they do what they preach, and actually they do use reliance at the level of pre-qualification for any of these products. They do not start the assessment, and if there is a need for a pre-qualification of any of these products, they will focus only on any need for a guidelines update or any discussion that is not relevant to the benefit risk assessment. And there are issues at the level of faster approval at localized within the national competent authorities, and we are trying to address those by involving experts, having specific pre-submission meetings with them, ensuring that they raise their voice, that they are not just observing in the background, even if sometimes only this facilitates faster national approvals, but they do get involved so they can have an informed decision and we can have an enriched assessment. So there are different ways in which we are trying to evolve and improve. We saw, for example, also, as Maribel mentioned, the new involvement of our PRAC committee, the committee responsible for the safety, because when we discuss the risk management plan that the companies will put in place, we want to make sure these risk management plans are feasible where they will be put in place. And that's why we are involving experts within that discussion as well very much now to ensure that they can provide their input, their local knowledge on how risk minimizations could be, if needed, be implemented, or how is the local epidemiology dealt within their own countries. So we are continuously discussing with WHO and with the members that are involved, with the national competent authorities that are involved in the procedure, to ensure this is a truly collaborative pathway, and this really facilitates faster access to patients to these innovative medicines.
Thank you, Victoria. I think we have exhausted all the questions. So I will, before we actually come to the end of the session, I saw a question that Tendai asked that I didn't address, and that was actually for a reason. Sorry about that, Tendai. So I would like to address it right now. So it was regarding, because it was addressed to me and the work we do at APN with workforce development. And it was on the approaches that are being implemented in the design of the programs. So in the design of the programs, or rather in the establishment of the Pharmacy Academy, what actually pushed us to establish the Academy, one was to close the bridge gap between education and practice, because we realized that with pharmaceutical sciences, the curriculum is more of theory-based instead of practical. So when professionals, or rather graduates, transition from school to the job market, there are some gaps. And there was also a report that was launched on how on the several areas where there's notable skills gap in Africa's pharmaceutical sector. And those were in regulatory science, research and development, areas like supply chain. So based on this, we were able to design programs in this particular species that can be able to bridge that gap. And also something that was noted was that companies reported that employees take up to 3 years to be of 3 years of training and practical experience for them to become a specialist in this particular species. So we were able to design programs that can be able to enable competence-based programs that can able to equip the professionals with the competencies, skills that can enable them to thrive in the spaces and also adapt to emerging trends. And one of such trainings is the training on regulatory affairs, and there's an intake currently ongoing that the cohort will start in February. And for this course, some of the course objectives is to promote understanding of basic principles in regulatory affairs, equip learners with the skills to execute functions in regulatory affairs, such as dossier preparation, submission, and regulatory agency engagements, engage in regulatory compliance, intelligence, and quality assurance, and expose graduates to career opportunities in regulatory affairs. One thing to also note about our courses is that they're also accredited by the International Pharmaceutical Federation, FIP, and awarded ICPD accredited as well by the Pharmacy and Poisons Board in Kenya. We're also hoping to expand. We're currently working on something with the Pharmaceutical Society of Uganda to enable us to get them accredited in Uganda as well, because we realized that our learners, some of them are from Uganda, and also expand just all over Africa. So if you're interested in the course, then please you can scan the QR code to register. Something also notable that came up with the mention of AI just now was that AI generation can also enable dossier preparation, or rather dossier compilation, and the medical writing. So how then, as a professional, are you able to keep up with the emerging trends or other technological advancements in this particular space? Because in the past, regulatory affairs professionals have just been conveyor belts or other paper pushers. So we need to re-strategize on how we'll be able to adapt and ensure that we are not just reacting to unprecedented policy directive changes in the market as well, but also proactively shaping it and keeping up to pace with the standards, with the industry trends and standards. So I think with that, I would like to thank you all for sticking around till now. I would want to give a special thank you to the two facilitators, Victoria and Maribel. You've done an awesome job. We've been able to get value on this particular pathway, and I hope that we'll be able now to consider this pathway in the regulatory strategy development phase for new market authorization pathways, for new market authorization of new products, because with the increasing burden of non-communicable diseases, the demand for products is actually going to be even higher. So I think if we explore and adopt these new pathways, we'll be able to ensure that there's health product security within our African market. So thank you so much. Please feel free to reach out to Victoria and Maribel on LinkedIn and extend that thank you, ask those questions. And I think I can give them a word to say before we close off. We can start with Victoria.
Thank you. Thank you so much. We hope this was useful. Feel free to use any of the links that were shared with you within the presentation, or reach out to us if you have any additional questions. Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you. Maribel, over to you.
No, thank you very much. I think that it's always a pleasure to try to to show how this work and to learn from you, because we also learn from you, from the questions, and we are always open to improve. And as Victoria said, if everything, there are many points taken in the. We are aware that it was a long presentation. There are many points explained. Maybe it's not so clear all the points because it's impossible to explain all the details, but we are here to help in case there is any clarification needed. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Maribel. So please note that we will share the recording of the session and the slides as well for your use and reference. Thank you all and have a lovely day.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye.